Captain Jake Morrison stepped into the shuttle bay of the Imperial Palace Station, followed by Dr. Nathan Bell and Lieutenant Commander Alex Chen. The Zephyrian structure was massive beyond anything humans had ever built, with corridors that stretched for miles and ceilings that disappeared into shadows high above. Emperor Zixthul waited for them in the central throne room, a vast chamber filled with floating platforms and holographic displays showing the entire Zephyrian Empire. The alien ruler sat on a throne made from some kind of crystalline material that pulsed with inner light. "Welcome to the heart of the Zephyrian Collective," the Emperor said as the humans approached. "Few aliens have ever stood in this chamber. None have come here after destroying one of my fleets." Jake bowed slightly, showing respect without submission. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us, Your Excellence. Humanity hopes this can be the beginning of a new relationship between our peoples." Emperor Zixthul studied the three humans with his 4 yellow eyes. "Tell me, Captain Morrison, how did you develop weapons that could defeat Zephyrian technology? Our scientists have spent centuries perfecting our energy shields and weapon systems." Dr. Bell stepped forward. "Your Excellence, we approached the problem differently. While your people focused on generating more and more energy, we concentrated on materials science and kinetic systems. We built weapons that don't rely on energy at all." "And your adaptive shielding system?" "Based on captured fragments of Zephyrian technology," Dr. Bell admitted. "We studied your energy patterns for years, learning how to absorb and redirect them. In a way, your own weapons helped us create a defense against them." The Emperor made a sound that might have been admiration. "Clever. You turned our strength into your advantage. This is not how most species think about warfare." Alex Chen spoke up. "Your Excellence, humanity has always believed that every problem has a solution. When we encountered technology we couldn't match directly, we found a different approach. And now you have come to my home system to demonstrate this philosophy?" Jake nodded. "We want you to understand that humanity is not a threat to the Zephyrian Collective, but we are also not victims who can be bullied. We offer friendship between equals." Emperor Zixthul was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. Through the massive windows of the throne room, he could see the 4 human ships maintaining their position near his palace station. Each one represented a level of military power that could challenge his entire fleet. "Captain Morrison," the Emperor finally said, "in my 2 centuries of rule, no species has ever spoken to me as an equal. The Collective has maintained order in this sector, through strength and fear."
"How do you propose to change that?"
"By offering a better alternative," Jake replied. "Instead of ruling through fear, why not lead through cooperation? Humanity has technologies and ideas that could benefit all the species in this region. We're willing to share them with allies. And what do you want in return? Freedom for human colonies to exist and grow, trade agreements that benefit everyone, and most importantly, peace between our peoples." The Emperor stood up from his throne and walked to one of the great windows. Outside, hundreds of Zephyrian ships patrolled the system, but none of them dared approach the 4 human vessels. "You realize," he said slowly, "that what you are proposing would fundamentally change the balance of power in this part of the galaxy." "Yes, we do," Jake replied. "But change was coming whether we wanted it or not. Humanity has reached the point where we can defend ourselves against any threat. The question is whether that change comes through war or through negotiation." Dr. Bell activated a small holographic projector, showing technical diagrams of human technology. "Your Excellence, we've prepared some examples of what humanity could offer in a cooperative relationship. Advanced materials, medical technologies, agricultural techniques that could increase food production on dozens of worlds." Emperor Zixthul studied the holographic displays with growing interest. The human technologies were unlike anything in Zephyrian databases, representing completely different approaches to common problems. "Your medical technology," he said, pointing to one of the displays. "It appears to be based on genetic manipulation rather than energy healing." "That's correct," Dr. Bell replied. "We've learned to work with biological systems at the cellular level. Many diseases that require expensive energy treatments in Zephyrian medicine can be cured permanently with genetic therapy. And this agricultural system? Vertical farming using artificial light and optimized nutrients. A single facility can produce as much food as a traditional farm covering hundreds of square kilometers." The Emperor turned back to face the humans. "These technologies would be valuable to many species in the Collective. But what about military applications? Your weapons have already proven superior to ours in some ways." Jake chose his words carefully. Your Excellence, humanity has no interest in building an empire or conquering other worlds. We're explorers and scientists at heart, but we will defend ourselves and our allies with everything we have. And if I were to agree to this alliance, what would happen to species that oppose it? They would be free to go their own way, as long as they don't threaten human colonies or our allies. We're not interested in forcing anyone to join us. Emperor Zixthul walked back to his throne and sat down, deep in thought. The decision he made in the next few minutes would affect the fate of thousands of worlds and billions of lives. Captain Morrison, he said finally, I have ruled the collective for 200 years through strength and fear. It has maintained peace, but it has also prevented progress. Perhaps it is time to try something different. Jake felt his heart racing, but he kept his expression neutral. What are you proposing, Your Excellence? A formal alliance between humanity and the Zephyrian collective. We will share technologies and resources. Human colonies will be under the protection of both our fleets. In return, humanity will help us develop new approaches to the challenges facing our empire. That sounds like the beginning of something unprecedented, Jake replied. But what about other alien species? How will they react to this alliance? The Emperor smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. I suspect many of them will be very interested in joining us. The collective has not always been a kind ruler. An alliance based on cooperation rather than fear might be very attractive to species that have felt oppressed. Over the next several hours, the humans and Emperor Zixthul worked out the basic framework of their agreement. Dr. Bell shared detailed technical specifications for several human technologies, while the Emperor provided access to Zephyrian star charts and scientific databases. As they worked, reports came in from across the galaxy. News of the meeting was spreading rapidly, and dozens of alien civilizations were sending diplomatic messages to both Earth and the Zephyrian homeworld. Your Excellence, one of the Emperor's advisors reported, the Altarian Federation has requested permission to send a diplomatic mission to discuss joining the alliance. So have the Centauri Republics and the Vegan Trade Consortium. Jake looked up from the documents they had been preparing. It seems like a lot of species have been waiting for an alternative to the old system. Indeed, the Emperor replied. Perhaps the galaxy is ready for a new kind of leadership. When the formal agreement was finally signed, it was transmitted simultaneously to Earth and to every major alien government in known space. The message was simple but revolutionary. Humanity and the Zephyrian collective were now allies, committed to peace, cooperation, and mutual defense. As Jake prepared to return to the Leviathan, Emperor Zixthul spoke to him privately. Captain, when your ship first appeared in this system, I was prepared to order its destruction. I have never been more grateful that I chose to listen instead of fight. Your Excellence, this is just the beginning. With human ingenuity and Zephyrian resources working together, there's no limit to what we might accomplish. Jake returned to his ship to find the bridge buzzing with activity. Messages were pouring in from across human space, congratulating the crew on their historic achievement. Captain, Sarah Williams reported with excitement. I've got Admiral Kane on the priority channel. She wants a full report. Admiral Kane's face appeared on the main screen and she was smiling broadly. Captain Morrison, I've just received a copy of the alliance agreement. This is beyond anything we hoped to achieve when we sent you out there. Thank you, Admiral, but I think this is just the beginning. The Emperor mentioned that several other species are already asking to join the alliance. That's correct. Our diplomatic corps is working around the clock to handle all the requests. It looks like humanity has become the center of a new galactic government. Dr. Bell looked up from his science station. Admiral, the technological exchange alone will advance human science by decades. The Zephyrians have energy technologies we never dreamed of, and they're fascinated by our material science and biotechnology. Excellent, Captain. You and the other Titan-class ships are ordered to remain in Zephyrian space for now. You'll serve as the visible symbol of the new alliance while we work out all the details. As the communication ended, Jake walked to the viewing screen and looked out at the Zephyrian homeworld. In the distance, he could see General Thaxron arrived in the human systems with 3 battle fleets and absolute confidence. The War Council had chosen him specifically because his ancestors had participated in the original Great Purge. He understood humans better than most Valdari officers, or so he believed. These vermin survive by hiding like insects, he told his subordinates during the briefing. We will crush them as our forefathers should have done completely 3 centuries ago. His ships moved toward the planet Haven's Rest, with weapons charged and boarding parties ready. Thaxron expected to find primitive settlements, desperate survivors using crude weapons and basic technology. The reading suggested maybe 10,000 humans at most, a single afternoon's work to finish what the Great Purge had started. Commander Rick Taylor watched the approaching Valdari ships from his position in the Newton colony's primary defense center. Unlike Haven's Rest, Newton had been built specifically as a fortress world. The entire planet was a weapon, though the Empire didn't know it yet. Valdari landing ships are entering our atmosphere, reported his tactical officer. 12 heavy transports with escort fighters. Let them land, Rick ordered calmly. Sectors 7 through 12, just like we practiced. The Valdari troops hit the ground expecting to find cowering refugees. Instead, they found themselves in carefully prepared killing fields. The moment their boots touched soil, hidden weapons opened fire from concealed positions. Human soldiers emerged from camouflaged bunkers with weapons that made no sound, but dropped Valdari warriors instantly. General Thaxron watched his casualty reports climb with growing alarm. "How many humans are down there?" he demanded. "Unknown, sir. Our troops report organized resistance from multiple positions. They're using coordinated tactics and advanced weapons." "Advanced weapons?" Thaxron's voice rose. "They're supposed to be primitive survivors." On the surface, Rick Taylor moved between positions and armor that bent light around him, making him nearly invisible. The Newton colony had 40,000 residents, and every adult was a trained soldier. They had spent their entire lives preparing for this day. "Squad leaders, report." He spoke into his communicator. "Sector 7 secured. Enemy casualties at 80%. Sector 9 holding. We've captured 3 of their vehicles intact. Sector 12 requests backup. They're pulling back to their ships." Rick smiled grimly. The Valdari were learning their first lesson about what humanity had become during the long years of hiding. They weren't desperate refugees anymore. They were a military force that had been training for 3 centuries with one goal: survival through superior firepower and tactics. Dr. Lisa Parker's laboratories on Haven's Rest worked frantically as the battle raged above. Her team had 48 hours to upload everything to the quantum network before Valdari forces broke through their defenses. 300 years of scientific advancement couldn't be lost now. "Upload at 60%, called one of her assistants. "Medical research is complete. Weapon designs are next." "What about the engine specifications?" Lisa asked. "Already transmitted to New Geneva and Titan Base. If we go down, at least 12 other colonies will have everything we've learned about faster-than-light travel." Lisa nodded, then returned to her own work. The humans hadn't just survived by hiding. They had thrived by learning. Every piece of Valdari technology that crashed on human worlds had been studied, improved, and shared across their network. In some areas, human science had advanced beyond what the Empire possessed. Carl Brooks maintained communications from his deep bunker as explosions shook the ground above him. His quantum transmitters connected 67 human colonies across the galaxy, and the reports flooding in painted a clear picture. The Valdari Empire had found humanity, but humanity was fighting back. "Haven's Rest, this is New Geneva. We've repelled the first attack. Valdari losses at 70%. They're calling for reinforcements." Titan Base reporting successful ambush of Imperial supply convoy. "We've captured enough equipment to arm 3 more colonies." Kepler's Pride confirms orbital battle victory. Valdari fleet retreating to outer system. Carl compiled the reports and transmitted them across the network. Every human colony could see what was happening galaxy-wide. They weren't fighting alone. They were part of something the Empire had never imagined, a coordinated human resistance spanning dozens of worlds. General Thaxron received his own reports with growing horror. Newton Colony wasn't falling as expected. Instead, his troops were being systematically destroyed by an enemy that seemed to anticipate their every move. "Sir, we're receiving similar reports from other battle groups," his aide informed him. "Kepler's Pride has destroyed Admiral Vextar's entire escort fleet. The humans there had ships, sir. Military vessels with advanced weaponry." "Ships?" Thaxron's voice cracked. "The reports said these were hiding survivors." "The reports were wrong, sir. We're facing organized military resistance across 17 star systems. Preliminary estimates suggest human population in the hundreds of thousands, possibly millions." The truth hit Thaxron like ice water. The Great Purge hadn't destroyed humanity. It had only taught them to hide better. And while they hid, they had been preparing for this exact scenario. On Haven's Rest, Jake Morrison coordinated the colony's defense from his command center 3 miles underground. The Valdari had broken through their first defensive layer, but that had always been expected. The real defenses were just beginning. Activate the surface installations, he ordered. Across the planet's seemingly barren landscape, hidden weapons emerged from concealed positions. Missile launchers rose from fake rock formations. Energy weapons unfolded from camouflaged bunkers. What had appeared to be a dead world revealed itself as a fortress that had been 3 centuries in the building. The Valdari ships in orbit found themselves under attack from ground-based weapons that shouldn't have existed. Human technology, refined through generations of careful study and innovation, reached into space with devastating accuracy. "This is impossible," General Thaxeron muttered as his flagship's shields absorbed another barrage. "Primitives don't have this kind of firepower." "Sir, incoming transmission from the Imperial capital. The Emperor demands an immediate report." Thaxeron straightened his uniform and faced the communication screen. Emperor Vashatai's image appeared, his scaled features showing irritation and impatience. "General Thaxeron, you assured the War Council this would be a simple extermination mission. Yet I'm receiving reports of significant Imperial losses across multiple systems. Your Majesty, the intelligence was incorrect. These aren't scattered survivors. The humans have organized military forces, advanced technology, and coordinated defenses across dozens of worlds." The Emperor's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Are you telling me that the Great Purge was a failure? That humanity has survived and grown strong enough to challenge Imperial forces?" Thaxeron swallowed hard. "Yes, Your Majesty. That appears to be exactly what has happened." The communication screen went dark, leaving Thaxeron alone with the terrible truth. The Valdari Empire's greatest victory had been a lie. Humanity hadn't just survived their attempt at genocide. They had used it as motivation to become something far more dangerous than they had ever been before. And now, after 3 centuries of preparation, humanity was ready to fight back. The war that was supposed to have been won long ago was about to begin in earnest, and the Empire was about to learn why humans were considered dangerous in the first place. Emperor Vashatai stood before the War Council in the Imperial capital, his rage barely contained. The massive chamber fell silent as he spoke. 3 battle fleets have been defeated by an enemy we declared extinct 3 centuries ago. His voice echoed off the crystalline walls. "General Thaxeron reports organized resistance across 47 star systems. The humans have ships, weapons, and military coordination that rivals our own forces." War Marshal Quendor, the Empire's highest military commander, stepped forward. "Your Majesty, this is clearly impossible. The Great Purge eliminated the human threat completely. These must be isolated survivors with stolen technology." "Isolated survivors don't coordinate attacks across 17 different star systems simultaneously," the Emperor snapped. "Isolated survivors don't possess weapons capable of destroying Imperial battlecruisers." The truth was spreading throughout the Empire's command structure like poison. Humanity hadn't been destroyed. The greatest military victory in Valdari history had been built on a lie. And now that lie was collapsing under the weight of human resistance. Colonel Ben Rodriguez moved through the tunnels of Kepler's Pride with practiced ease. The planet had been hollowed out over 3 generations, turned into a fortress world that existed almost entirely underground. Above ground, the surface looked like barren rock and metal deposits. Below ground, 2 million humans lived in a city that spanned continents. "Colonel, Valdari ground forces have landed in sectors 12 through 18, reported his communications officer. "Approximately 50,000 troops with heavy armor support." "Good," Ben replied. "Right where we want them." Kepler's Pride wasn't just a hiding place. It was a trap that had been 300 years in the making. Every tunnel, every chamber, every passage had been designed with one purpose: to destroy any invading force that tried to take the planet. The Valdari troops advanced into what appeared to be mining tunnels, expecting to find cowering refugees. Instead, they found themselves in a maze where the walls themselves were weapons. Hidden passages opened to reveal human soldiers with advanced armor and energy weapons. Automated defenses tracked their movements and struck from unexpected angles. "This is Commander Hexaval to Fleet Command." A Valdari officer spoke desperately into his communicator. We need immediate extraction. These aren't tunnels, they're fortifications. The entire planet is a weapon. Engineer Kate Sullivan worked in the asteroid belt between human and Valdari space, where hidden facilities had operated in secret for decades. Her team specialized in something the Empire had never expected: sabotage on an industrial scale. The supply convoy will pass through Sector 7 in 18 hours, she told her team. 37 ships carrying weapons, food, and reinforcements to their battle groups. All ships? Asked her demolitions expert. All ships, Kate confirmed. We've been tracking their supply routes for months. Time to show them what happens when they try to wage war against people who've been preparing for 3 centuries. The human sabotage teams weren't random terrorists. They were highly trained engineers and soldiers who understood Valdari technology better than most Valdari. Every Imperial ship that had been captured or destroyed had been studied. Every weakness had been catalogued. Every vulnerability had been mapped. When the supply convoy reached Sector 7, it found space mines that shouldn't have existed, deployed by ships that couldn't be detected. The explosions lit up the void as 37 Valdari vessels died in the span of 10 minutes. Major Tony Clark commanded the first human liberation fleet from the bridge of the battleship New Dawn. Around him, 47 human warships moved through space in perfect formation. They had been built in secret shipyards hidden inside gas giant atmospheres and asteroid fields, using technology that combined the best of human innovation with captured Valdari systems. Admiral Hayes sends his compliments, reported his communications officer. Operation Hammerfall is approved. We are weapons-free, Tony smiled. For 300 years, humans had hidden from the Empire's ships. Today, they would learn what humanity could build when they set their minds to it. The Valdari patrol fleet near Titan's Gate detected the human ships too late. What they had expected to be crude, vessels cobbled together from scrap metal, turned out to be sophisticated warships with weapons that burned through Imperial shields like paper. Impossible, whispered the Valdari commander as his flagship died around him. Humans don't have this technology, but they did. 3 centuries of careful study, patient development, and coordinated effort had produced a human fleet that could match the Empire ship for ship. And unlike the Valdari, every human ship was crewed by people who were fighting for survival. Dr. Grace Mitchell broadcast from a hidden transmission station, her message reaching across Imperial space through hijacked communication networks. Her voice spoke in perfect Valdari as well as dozens of other alien languages. People of the Empire, she began, you have been lied to. The Great Purge did not eliminate humanity. We survived, we grew, and we thrived. For 300 years, your leaders have built their power on the lie that they destroyed us completely. Her message included video footage from the battles now raging across human space. Valdari ships burning. Imperial troops fleeing from human positions. Evidence that the Empire's greatest victory had been a complete fabrication. The humans were never the monsters your leaders claimed, Grace continued. We are builders, explorers, and defenders of freedom. The Empire fears us not because we are violent, but because we refuse to surrender our right to exist. The message reached worlds throughout the Empire, species that had been conquered and suppressed by Valdari rule for centuries. On dozens of planets, alien populations looked up at the stars and wondered, if the humans had survived and grown strong, what else were they capable of? Captain Alex Ford piloted his stealth ship through the heart of Imperial space, gathering intelligence that would reshape the war. His vessel, the Silent Arrow, used technology that made it invisible to Valdari sensors, allowing him to observe Imperial fleet movements and military installations without detection. What he found changed everything. Control. This is Silent Arrow, he transmitted back to human command. I'm observing massive fleet redeployments throughout the Empire's core systems. They're pulling ships from border worlds to reinforce the battle zones. Confirmed, Silent Arrow. What about the occupied worlds? That's the interesting part. 12 different species are showing signs of unrest. The Kethani have stopped shipments to Imperial worlds. The Vortok are refusing military service. It looks like our message is getting through. Alex smiled as he watched Valdari ships scramble to contain problems that seemed to be erupting across their territory. The Empire had built their rule on fear and the myth of invincibility. Now that myth was crumbling, and their subject species were starting to remember what freedom looked like. War Marshal Quendor studied the tactical displays in the Imperial War Room with growing dread. Red indicators showed human resistance across 53 star systems. Yellow markers indicated supply line failures and sabotage attacks. Most alarming of all, green signals showed unrest and rebellion among the Empire's subject species. "How many ships have we lost?" he asked his aide. 237 confirmed destroyed, sir. Another 152 damaged beyond immediate repair. The humans are using tactics we've never encountered before. What kind of tactics? Coordinated, sir. Every battle seems designed to teach them something about our capabilities, while revealing new aspects of theirs. It's like they've been studying us for centuries. Quendor realized with cold certainty that this was exactly what had happened. The humans hadn't spent 300 years just hiding. They had been watching, learning, and preparing for exactly this moment. The Empire had created their own worst nightmare. In trying to destroy humanity completely, they had forced the survivors to become something far more dangerous than they had ever been before. And now, that danger was spreading throughout the galaxy as other species realized that the Valdari Empire could be defeated. The war that was supposed to have ended 3 centuries ago was becoming something much larger than anyone had imagined. Admiral Scott Hayes stood in the command center of New Olympus, humanity's greatest secret weapon. The massive space station had been built inside a hollowed asteroid, invisible to Imperial sensors and capable of coordinating human military operations across the entire galaxy. From here, he could see the full scope of what humanity had accomplished during their 3 centuries in hiding. "Admiral, we have reports from all battle groups," his operations officer announced. "The Valdari are pulling back from 17 systems. They've lost over 400 ships in the past month. Any word from our deep reconnaissance teams?" Captain Ford reports increasing unrest throughout the Empire. "The Cathani have declared independence from Imperial rule. The Vortek are in open rebellion. 6 other species are showing signs of resistance." Scott nodded with satisfaction. This was exactly what they had hoped for when they decided to reveal themselves. The Empire's power had always been based on fear, and the belief that resistance was impossible. Now humanity's survival proved that the Valdari could be defeated. "Send a message to all colony commanders," he ordered. "Phase 2 begins immediately." Dr. Grace Mitchell's psychological warfare campaign reached new audiences every day as her messages spread throughout Imperial space. In the hidden broadcast center beneath New Geneva, she coordinated information warfare on a scale the Empire had never faced. "The humans call it the domino effect," she explained to her team. "When one piece falls, it knocks down the next, which knocks down the next." The Empire kept control by making sure no one believed resistance was possible. Now we've proven it is. Her latest broadcasts included footage of human victories, interviews with liberated alien prisoners, and evidence of Imperial war crimes that had been hidden for centuries. More importantly, she had established contact with resistance movements on dozens of occupied worlds. "Doctor, we're receiving transmissions from the Helix Nebula," reported her communications specialist. "The Drathani are asking for military assistance in overthrowing their Imperial governors." "What about the Outer Rim territories?" "Same story. 14 different species want to coordinate their independence movements with our operations." Grace smiled. The Empire's greatest fear was becoming reality. They faced not just human resistance, but a galaxy-wide rebellion inspired by humanity's refusal to stay dead. Captain Alex Ford's stealth missions into Imperial space revealed the true scope of the crisis facing the Valdari Empire. His ship moved unseen through their most secure systems, gathering intelligence that painted a picture of an empire in rapid decline. "Silent arrow to New Olympus," he transmitted through quantum channels. "Imperial fleet strength is down by 60% in the outer territories. They're consolidating around core worlds, but that's leaving their subject species with minimal occupation forces." "What about their industrial capacity?" Admiral Hayes asked. "That's the real problem for them. Their war production depended on forced labor from conquered species. Now those species are in revolt, and their factories are shutting down. The Valdari are trying to fight a war with a shrinking industrial base." Alex's reports revealed something that human planners had hoped for but never dared expect. The Empire was collapsing from within. The Valdari had built their civilization on the backs of enslaved species, and now those species were learning that freedom was possible. On the planet Kepler's Pride, Colonel Ben Rodriguez received a message that changed the entire nature of the conflict. An Imperial communication had been intercepted, and its contents were being transmitted to every human colony. All commands, this is New Olympus. We have confirmed that Emperor Vashatai is requesting peace negotiations through neutral intermediaries. The Empire wants to discuss terms for ending the conflict. Ben read the message twice before he believed it. The mighty Valdari Empire, masters of the galaxy for over 1,000 years, wanted to negotiate with the humans they had tried to exterminate 3 centuries ago. "Sir," his aide asked, "are we going to accept?" "That's not up to us," Ben replied. "But I'll tell you what I think. 300 years ago they tried to wipe us out completely. Now they want peace because they're losing. What does that tell you about their character?" The question of peace negotiations sparked debate across every human colony. Some argued for accepting imperial surrender and focusing on rebuilding. Others insisted that true peace required the complete dismantling of the Empire's oppressive system. Major Tony Clark's fleet intercepted Imperial peace envoys near the border between human and Valdari space. The alien diplomats expected to negotiate from a position of strength, offering to recognize human independence in exchange for an end to hostilities. "You misunderstand the situation," Tony told the lead envoy over the communication channel. "We're not seeking independence from your empire. We're seeking justice for 3 centuries of attempted genocide and freedom for every species you've enslaved." "That is impossible," the Valdari diplomat replied. "The empire spans thousands of worlds. You cannot simply demand its dissolution." "Watch us," Tony said simply, and ordered his ships to escort the imperial delegation back to their own territory. The rejection of peace talks sent shockwaves throughout the empire. The humans weren't interested in negotiating a separate peace. They wanted to tear down the entire imperial system and replace it with something based on freedom rather than conquest. War Marshal. Quendor faced the Emperor's wrath as defeat followed defeat across the battlefronts. The Imperial Palace had become a fortress as subject species rebelled on worlds throughout the Empire. "The humans have formed an alliance," he reported to the increasingly desperate Emperor. 17 different species have joined their Liberation Council. They're coordinating military operations across our entire territory. "How is this possible?" Emperor Vashatai demanded. "These are primitive species without spacefaring capability. The humans are providing them with ships, weapons, and training. 3 centuries of hiding taught them how to build weapons that we can't detect or counter. Now they're sharing that technology with anyone willing to fight against us." The Emperor stared at the tactical displays showing red zones spreading across the map of his territory. The empire that had seemed invincible just months ago was crumbling under coordinated attacks from dozens of species led by humans who should have been extinct. Kate Sullivan's sabotage operations expanded to include alien resistance, fighters trained in human techniques. Her teams now operated throughout Imperial space, targeting not just military installations, but the economic infrastructure that kept the Empire functioning. "The beauty of it," she explained to her newest recruits, a group of Cathani rebels, "is that the Empire never learned to fight this kind of war. They're used to conquering planets with overwhelming force. They don't know how to deal with enemies who hide among civilian populations and strike at their weak points." Her latest operation destroyed the main shipyard at Valdari Prime, the Empire's capital system. The explosion could be seen from orbit, and the psychological impact on Imperial morale was devastating. If humans and their allies could strike at the heart of Valdari space, nowhere was safe. President Helen Davis prepared for humanity's most important moment in 3 centuries. The United Human Colonies had elected her to speak for all of humanity when the time came to address the galaxy. That time had arrived. From the hidden capital world of New Earth, she would broadcast humanity's declaration to every species in the galaxy. The message would be carried by quantum transmitters, hijacked Imperial communications, and rebel networks spanning thousands of worlds. "People of the galaxy," she would begin, "humanity endures. We survived the Empire's attempt to destroy us, and we have grown strong in the darkness. But we did not grow strong for conquest. We grew strong so that no species would ever again face what we faced 3 centuries ago." Her declaration would announce the formation of the Galactic Liberation Council, a government based on the consent of free species rather than the fear imposed by Imperial conquest. It would offer membership to any world willing to reject the Empire's rule and embrace the principles of freedom and cooperation. But most importantly, it would announce that the war was far from over. The Empire could choose to dissolve peacefully, releasing its subject species and facing justice for centuries of oppression, or it could fight to the end and face destruction. The choice was theirs, but either way, humanity had made its decision 300 years ago in the depths of hiding and preparation. They would never again allow an empire built on oppression to threaten the freedom of any species. The galaxy was about to learn what humans meant when they said that some things were worth fighting for, no matter the cost. President Helen Davis stood before the quantum transmitters on New Earth, knowing that her words would reach every corner of the galaxy within minutes. Behind her, the newly revealed capital city stretched for miles, home to millions of humans who had lived their entire lives preparing for this moment. People of the galaxy, she began, her voice carrying across space through hijacked Imperial communication networks. I am Helen Davis, elected President of the United Human Colonies. Today, I speak to you from New Earth, capital of a civilization that the Valdari Empire claimed to have destroyed 3 centuries ago. On thousands of worlds throughout Imperial space, beings of dozens of different species stopped what they were doing to listen. The transmission reached Valdari military commanders, enslaved populations on conquered worlds, and neutral species who had watched the growing conflict with increasing interest. The Empire told you that humanity was a threat that had to be eliminated completely. Helen continued. They were right about one thing. We are a threat. We are a threat to tyranny, oppression, and the idea that some species are born to rule while others are born to serve. Her declaration had been planned for 3 centuries, crafted by generations of human leaders who knew this day would come. It formally announced the existence of the Galactic Liberation Council, a government that would replace the Empire's rule with something based on freedom and cooperation between species. General Pete Stone led the final assault on the Imperial capital world from orbit, commanding a fleet that represented everything humanity had built during their long years in hiding. Around his flagship, ships from 17 different species flew in formation, united under the banner of the Liberation Council. All units, this is ground command, he broadcast to the invasion fleet. The Imperial capital is heavily defended, but our intelligence indicates the population is ready to surrender. We are not here as conquerors, we are here as liberators. The battle for Valdari Prime lasted 6 hours. Imperial defenses, weakened by rebellion and supply shortages, crumbled under coordinated attacks from species that had been enslaved for centuries. But it wasn't the military defeat that broke the Empire's spirit. It was the sight of their former slaves fighting alongside the humans they had tried to exterminate. Admiral Scott Hayes commanded the space battle from New Olympus, watching as the last Imperial fleet made a desperate stand above their capital world. War Marshal Quenador himself led the defense, driving his ships forward in a final attempt to preserve the empire that had ruled the galaxy for over 1,000 years. Admiral, the Imperial flagship is signaling surrender, reported his tactical officer. Accept their surrender, Scott ordered. All ships cease fire. Prepare boarding parties to secure Imperial vessels. As Valdari warships powered down their weapons, Scott reflected on the long journey that had brought them to this moment. Humanity had endured 3 centuries of hiding, preparation, and careful planning. Now they stood victorious not because they sought conquest, but because they refused to let tyranny go unchallenged. War Marshal Quendor was brought aboard the human flagship under guard, his proud bearing barely masking his defeat. He had expected humans to execute him immediately, following the Imperial tradition of killing conquered leaders. Instead, he found himself facing Admiral Hayes in a civilized meeting room. You fought well, Scott told him honestly. Your tactics were sound and your soldiers showed courage. Then why did we lose? Quendor asked. Scott considered the question carefully. Because you were fighting for an empire built on fear and oppression. We were fighting for survival and the right of all species to be free. In the end, motivation matters more than tactics. As Imperial forces across the galaxy received word of their capital's fall, the Valdari Empire began its final collapse. Some commanders continued fighting, but most recognized the futility of resistance. The subject species they had oppressed for centuries were rising up everywhere, supported by human weapons and training. Jake Morrison, promoted from colony commander to planetary governor, oversaw the occupation of a former Imperial world. His troops worked alongside local resistance fighters to establish the infrastructure of democratic government. It was delicate work, requiring patience and understanding of species that had known only authoritarian rule for generations. The hardest part, he explained to his staff, isn't defeating the Empire's military. It's helping people remember how to be free. The transition from imperial rule to Liberation Council governance required careful planning and enormous resources. Humanity had prepared for this phase as thoroughly as they had prepared for war, training thousands of administrators, diplomats, and advisors who could help other species build free societies. Dr. Grace Mitchell's broadcasts now carried a different message to the galaxy. Instead of calling for resistance, she explained the principles of the Liberation Council and helped species understand what freedom meant in practical terms. Freedom isn't the absence of rules, she explained in one transmission that reached billions of beings. Freedom is the right to choose your own rules, to elect your own leaders, and to build the society you want for your children. Her words were translated into hundreds of languages and broadcast on thousands of worlds. For species that had lived under imperial oppression for centuries, the concepts of democracy and self-determination were revolutionary ideas that required careful explanation. Captain Alex Ford continued his intelligence work, but now his mission was different. Instead of spying on imperial military installations, he searched for evidence of other species the Empire claimed to have exterminated. Humanity's survival proved that imperial records couldn't be trusted, and the Liberation Council wanted to find any other survivors of attempted genocide. His discoveries were remarkable. In the outer territories, he found hidden colonies of the Veltar, supposedly extinct for 500 years. Deep in the galactic core, small populations of Krathani lived in secret, descendants of refugees from imperial pacification campaigns. Each discovery brought new members to the Liberation Council and further proof of the Empire's crimes. President Helen Davis addressed the galaxy one final time from the former imperial capital, now renamed Liberation Prime. Behind her, construction crews worked to tear down the monuments to imperial conquest and replace them with memorials to the victims of tyranny. The Valdari Empire is ended, she announced. In its place, we established the Galactic Liberation Council, a government of free species working together as equals. Membership is voluntary, and any world may choose its own path to freedom. Her words carried special weight because they came from someone whose species had been presumed extinct for 3 centuries. Humanity's survival and eventual victory proved that even the mightiest tyranny could be overcome by people who refused to surrender their freedom. The former Emperor Vashti faced trial for crimes against sentient beings, but his fate mattered less than the example of justice his prosecution provided. For the first time in galactic history, a species that had committed genocide faced consequences for their actions. Admiral Scott Hayes, now promoted to head of Liberation Council Defense Forces, stood on the bridge of his flagship as it patrolled the space lanes between formerly imperial worlds. His mission had changed from war to peacekeeping, ensuring that the transition to freedom proceeded without violence. Admiral, his communications officer reported, "We're receiving a distress signal from the Outer Rim. Pirates are attacking a refugee convoy." "Set course immediately," Scott ordered. "All ships prepare for humanitarian assistance." As his fleet moved to help, Scott reflected on how much had changed. Humanity had emerged from 3 centuries of hiding not as conquerors but as protectors. They had learned that true strength came not from the ability to destroy, but from the willingness to defend those who couldn't defend themselves. The galaxy was free, and humanity had played its part in making that freedom possible. But their greatest achievement wasn't military victory over the Empire. It was proving that species could work together as equals, that democracy could function on a galactic scale, and that freedom was worth any sacrifice. In the end, the Empire had been right about one thing: humanity was dangerous. They were dangerous to tyrants, oppressors, and anyone who believed that some beings were born to rule, while others were born to serve. And as long as humanity endured, the galaxy would remain free. The war that began 3 centuries ago with attempted genocide ended with the birth of a new kind of civilization, one built on cooperation instead of conquest, freedom instead of fear, and the simple idea that all sentient beings deserved the right to choose their own destiny. Humanity had endured. and in enduring they had saved the galaxy.